Gene Deal has finally broken his silence, and what he's revealing is absolutely unbelievable. You remember that Netflix documentary about Diddy that everyone has been talking about? Well, here's the part they didn't tell you. The footage Gene Deal collected was so explosive, so dangerous, that Netflix refused to show it. But now, Gene is preparing to leak every single piece of evidence that 50 Cent had to censor. And trust me, this is going to rewrite everything you thought you knew. I know why you clicked on this video. You want the real story, the unfiltered truth, and that's exactly what you're about to get. Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, the man who witnessed everything up close, has finally done an interview, and this time, he's not holding back. Here's what most people don't know. Gene was supposed to be in the Netflix documentary. He sat down with 50 Cent for 45 minutes. They had a plan. They were ready to expose it all. But then something went wrong. Very wrong. The director, Alex Stapleton, disrespected him, and Gene walked out. Now he's telling every story that never made the cut. Every truth they tried to bury. Every detail A-list celebrities paid to keep out of the documentary. You're about to learn the real story behind the City College tragedy. The truth about Anthony Wolfe Jones. What really happened with Kim Porter? And why some of the biggest names in Hollywood wanted no part of this. Everything 50 Cent couldn't show you, it's all coming out. Right here, right now. So let's get into it. Before we dive into the leaked evidence, you need to understand what happened behind the scenes. Because this part is wild. 50 Cent and Netflix recently dropped a documentary called Sean Combs' The Reckoning. It instantly hit #1. Everyone's watching it. Everyone's talking about it. But here's what they're not telling you. Some of the most important stories were completely left out. Gene Deal wasn't just some security guy. He was by Diddy's side for years. Through the parties, the violence, the backroom deals, the tragedies. He saw everything. And he recorded everything. He's been holding on to this footage for years, waiting for the right moment to tell the truth. He thought this documentary was finally going to be that moment. But after meeting director Alex Stapleton, everything fell apart. And now, Gene is done staying silent.
Don't even be silent. I want to put her on blast because she was telling me, she was saying to me that what I was asking for was crazy and they wasn't spending money like that. I'm talking about you got footage, you got clothing, you got, I was doing footage, I had pictures, all the stuff that I had, you could figure out a way to pay a brother and stuff like that. And then I was telling her about some prices that I've already received and I had the invoices to show it. And then she was calling me like I was lying. I was like, yo, who do you think you talking to? You know what I'm saying? And she was talking about, there's no way nobody paid. Nobody what? I say, first of all you people come with these documentaries and stuff, the first thing you tell me, y'all tell these people out here that y'all don't pay, and y'all pay. If you can make a picture look like $10,000, $15,000, you know what I'm saying? You can sit here and tell me that you're gonna pay me for my time sitting right down here with y'all. You understand? So then, one thing led to another, and I was like, all right, well then, F you, I spoke to 50, and then she said 50, and this is exact words that came out her mouth. 50 does not determine what goes in and go out of this documentary.
Gene Deal wasn't just trying to talk, he was trying to finally set the record straight. He wanted to do this the right way. That's why he brought in two men who knew Diddy from day one, Tim Burrows and Kirk Burrows. These three together, they could have told the full story. From Diddy's childhood, to the street-level chaos, to the rise of the billion-dollar empire, everything. Gene asked for $50,000 for all three of them as a package deal. Completely reasonable, especially considering the evidence and footage they had collected over decades. But this is where the entire thing started to fall apart. During negotiations, director Alex Stapleton dropped a bombshell. She told Gene that 50 Cent wasn't actually in control of the documentary. He didn't decide what got included. He didn't decide who got paid. According to her, 50's name was just being used for promotion, but he had zero real power over the project. That was the first slap in the face. Gene had invoices from previous documentaries showing exactly what he had been paid before. He showed her proof, and she called him a liar. Imagine that. A man who risked his life protecting Diddy. A man who witnessed real crimes. A man who collected evidence for years, being treated like he was making it all up. And while Gene was trying to negotiate a fair deal for everyone, guess what was happening behind his back? Kirk Burrows was making secret side deals. Welcome to the entertainment industry. where loyalty is rare and everyone looks out for themselves. Gene realized the whole thing was turning into a circus. He walked away. He refused to participate. And that's exactly why the Netflix documentary feels incomplete. Because the one man who knew the most, the man who lived through the chaos, refused to be part of it. But now, he's ready to tell you everything they left out. Let's start with something the documentary barely touched. Because once you understand this piece, everything else suddenly makes sense. How Bad Boy Records was really structured and why it mattered Kirk Burroughs. The same man from earlier owned 25% of Bad Boy Records from day one. Diddy owned the other 75%. But here's the twist. The entire company was placed under Diddy's mother's name, Janice Combs. Why would Diddy hide the company under his mother's identity? Why not put it under his own? Gene Deal knows the answer. It was a shield against lawsuits. Diddy knew what was coming. He knew he was going to be sued after the City College tragedy, where 9 people died at an event he organized. Their families were preparing massive lawsuits. So Diddy made sure Bad Boy Records wasn't legally linked to him. Cold, calculated, and effective. But the story gets darker. Diddy eventually wanted Kirk's 25% too. And according to Kirk's own testimony in the documentary, Diddy didn't just negotiate. He arrived with a baseball bat, threatened Kirk's life, and forced him to sign over his ownership stake. Kirk later tried to sue in 2003, but the case was dismissed because too much time had passed. Think about that. A co-founder of Bad Boy Records, a man who built the company beside Diddy, was stripped of everything through threats and violence. He ended up homeless. Meanwhile, Diddy became a billionaire off the empire they created together. Yes, the documentary mentioned this story, but they barely scratched the surface. They left out the real mechanics, the schemes, the hidden money, the legal maneuvering. Gene Deal could have exposed all of it. But none of that made it into Netflix's final cut. I wonder why.
Well, what I feel about the documentary, they left a whole lot of key things out. If they was going to do something and they're going to say in the reckoning of Sean Combs, the reckoning, or Diddy, the reckoning and stuff like that, it should have been a lot of people that we lost because of him. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't only Big. It wasn't only Tupac, you understand? For the atmosphere that he put those kids in. You got a guy named Anthony Wolf Jones, who was from Bad Boy, from its conception as doing security and being one of the financiers of Puff having to have some money to keep Big and Craig Mack around before he got to Clyde Davis.
Now this is where the story takes a turn into pure darkness. Because according to Gene Deal, there's an entire murder case that the Netflix documentary completely ignored. A story so dangerous, so explosive, they wouldn't dare go near it. And it revolves around one man, Anthony Wolf Jones. Wolf wasn't just another security guy. He was Bad Boy's head of security from day one, long before Clive Davis, long before the major deals, long before the fame. He was Diddy's most loyal soldier. Wolf knew everything. Where the bodies were buried, who got paid off, what really happened at those secret parties. Every secret, every lie, every crime. Wolf had the full map. And according to Gene Deal, Diddy's actions directly led to Wolf's murder. This is the part the documentary didn't touch. Not because it wasn't important, but because the filmmakers didn't have the intel, didn't have the evidence. Or maybe they had it, and decided it was too dangerous to show. Here's what Gene says. Wolf was killed by someone connected to BMF, the Black Mafia family, one of the most feared and powerful criminal organizations in hip-hop history. And Gene claims there is a direct, undeniable link between Wolf's death and Diddy. But how much of that made it into Netflix's documentary? Almost nothing. They flashed a few photos of Wolf, said he was part of security, and moved on like it was nothing. Why? Because this story isn't just scandalous. It's dangerous. It involves real criminals, real murders, and real organized crime. This isn't Hollywood drama. This is life and death territory. Netflix didn't want it. 50 Cent probably didn't want it either. It's the kind of story that makes studios nervous and lawyers panic. But Gene Deal? He's saying this story must be told. Because Wolf's murder wasn't random. It wasn't some street beef. It wasn't bad luck. It was connected, deeply connected, to everything else happening behind the scenes. And Gene is finally ready to expose it.
It was Puff, Heavy D, and Jessica. You know what I'm saying? Jessica was the reason why those kids lost their life, because she locked the door on those kids running down the step. You understand? You could see her name in a news article, but they didn't mention nothing about her taking place, but they try to put Heavy D, God bless the dead, out there, and they put Puff out there. You know what I'm saying? She should have been the main one, because she is the one who locked the door on the kids. You understand? She is the one who locked the door on the kids, and all those kids lost their life.
What you're about to hear will make you look at the City College tragedy and the entire Netflix documentary completely differently. Because while the documentary mentioned the tragedy, they left out the most important details. And Gene Deal? He was there. He saw it with his own eyes. On December 28th, 1991, Diddy organized a celebrity basketball charity event at City College in New York. Heavy D was involved. Huge stars were scheduled to appear. Mike Tyson, LL Cool J, you name it. The place was packed wall to wall. Originally, Gene Deal's security team was hired to control the outside crowd. He had 18 trained men, guard dogs, gates, a complete setup. Gene knew how wild Harlem crowds got when celebrities walked in. He was prepared. But the day before the event, Diddy suddenly told Gene that Heavy D didn't want his security team anymore. They were fired. No outside control, no crowd management. So when Tyson and LL Cool J walked in through the front instead of the private entrance, the crowd surged. People were crushed in the stairwell. Panic exploded instantly. Here's the part Netflix completely avoided. One of the event promoters, Jessica Rosenblum, panicked when she saw the crowd pushing toward the entrance. But instead of worrying about the people, she worried about the money box, the cash from ticket sales. Gene says she grabbed the money and locked the door at the bottom of the stairwell to protect it. And when she locked that door, hundreds of people were trapped. 9 people, 9 kids, died because an exit was sealed to protect money. Gene tried to help, but the crowd was so dense he had to run around the gym and break in from another entrance. By the time he reached the stairwell, kids were already dead. He performed CPR on a 17-year-old boy who didn't survive. His older brother stood over him sobbing, saying, "This was the first time I took him anywhere. My mama's gonna kill me." Gene saw it all. He knows who locked that door. But Jessica Rosenblum? Never charged, barely mentioned. The documentary ignored her, ignored the cash box, ignored why Gene's trained security team was fired. They told some of the story, but not the truth Gene witnessed. Why Gene really walked away behind the scenes, the drama was just as messy. Gene tried to create a package deal with Tim Burrows, who knew Diddy's early life, and Kirk Burrows, who knew the business side. Between them, they could have told the complete story, but director Alex Stapleton shut it down immediately. She claimed Gene was asking for crazy money, even after he showed invoices proving he had been paid similar amounts for other documentaries. She dismissed his evidence. Then she said something that made Gene realize the entire production was a facade. 50 Cent doesn't control what goes in the documentary. He doesn't decide who gets paid. Think about that. They marketed this as 50 Cent's explosive Diddy documentary. But the man whose name was driving the hype? He had no real creative control. Meanwhile, Kirk Burrows was making secret side deals behind Gene's back, even pressuring Gene to accept less money while negotiating his own contract quietly. Gene finally walked away. And that is why the documentary feels incomplete. The man who knew the most refused to participate. The Kim Porter silence. Another major omission, Kim Porter, Diddy's ex, mother of his children, who died suddenly at 47. Official cause, pneumonia. But Kim knew everything. The parties, the business, the violence. And yet the documentary barely acknowledged her. Multiple insiders say the filmmakers intentionally avoided the Kim Porter story because it was too dangerous. Gene knew Kim. He protected her. He has information. None of it made the documentary. Where were the celebrities? Diddy threw legendary parties for decades. Celebrities, politicians, athletes, everyone. Yet the documentary doesn't show a single A-list celebrity involved in anything questionable. Gene believes many of them paid 50 Cent to stay out of the documentary. Not because 50 wanted to hide them, but because he's a businessman. He wanted to expose Diddy, not destroy innocent careers. But that means the documentary is a sanitized version of the truth, one that protects powerful people while putting everything on Diddy's shoulders. And Gene Deal sees right through it.
Marna, have you seen that the documentary, the 50 Cent No, I haven't
documentary
seen it yet.
for Diddy?
I haven't seen it.
Oh man, you worked
Everybody
hard.
telling me you got to see it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
Part of me don't want to see it
You probably don't.
because it's all skewed, man. Like when you put stuff together, you create whatever narratives you want to, and at the end of the day, everybody being programmed. You know, right now the man's serving time.
Right.
You know, he went before the court. The court said this, and everything is God. But God said this is what he got to do. He got to do 5 years in pen. Let him do his 5 years.
And speaking of celebrities staying silent, Marlon Wayans just said something that has everyone talking. Someone asked him if he watched the documentary, and his response was very interesting. Marlon said he hasn't seen it, and probably never will. But then he added something that froze the entire conversation. He called the documentary a narrative. He said, "When you put stuff together, you can create whatever story you want. Everybody's being programmed." Programmed? A documentary about Diddy programming people? Why would Marlon Wayans say that? Is he defending Diddy? Is he calling out Netflix for being biased? Or, and this is the theory a lot of people are whispering, does Marlon have his own experiences with Diddy that he does not want brought into the light? Because here's the truth. Rumors about Marlon and Diddy have floated around the industry for years. Nothing confirmed. Nothing on record. Just quiet whispers from people who were there. People who saw things. So when Marlon refuses to watch the documentary, when he calls it a narrative, when he talks about programming, you have to wonder, what does he know? What is he avoiding? What is he afraid might come out? And this is where Gene Deal comes in again. Gene has been around these celebrities for decades. He knows the stories. He knows the secrets. He knows the connections that never made it into the documentary. And according to Gene, Marlon isn't the only one with something to hide. A lot of celebrities didn't want their names anywhere near this project. And that's exactly why their stories disappeared. They didn't want to be exposed. They didn't want to explain their relationship with Diddy. They didn't want cameras digging into events they hoped were forgotten. So they stayed quiet. They stayed out of the documentary. And Netflix was more than happy to leave them out. Because once powerful celebrities start pulling strings, stories get rewritten, evidence gets cut, narratives get shaped, and the truth gets buried. Exactly why Gene Deal's version of events is so dangerous. And why so many people want it kept in the dark.
Did you get that footage of Diddy?
I figured most journalists would not disclose their sources.
Does he know y'all have this in the doc?
I would doubt he knows.
So when this airs, that'll be the first time that his legal team, Diddy, that everybody knows that this footage is now seeing the light of day.
Now we need to talk about the most explosive part of this entire documentary, the footage. Because if there's one thing that shocked people more than the allegations, it was the behind-the-scenes video of Diddy right before his arrest. And the biggest question everyone is asking is, how did 50 Cent get that footage in the first place? The documentary shows Diddy in a New York hotel room, talking to his lawyer on speakerphone, discussing strategy, panicking about media coverage, deeply private, deeply sensitive conversations. This wasn't random surveillance. Diddy had hired a videographer to film him during that time. Maybe he wanted to create his own documentary later. Maybe he wanted a record of everything. Either way, someone was following him with a camera. But here's the issue. That footage legally belonged to Diddy. The videographer worked for him. NDAs were signed. Contracts were in place. So how did 50 Cent get it? Diddy's lawyers immediately sent Netflix a cease and desist, calling the footage stolen, claiming it was never authorized for release. They demanded Netflix remove the entire documentary. Netflix publicly responded, saying they legally obtained the footage, but refused to explain how. 50 Cent won't talk about it. The videographer hasn't spoken publicly. So what really happened? One theory, the videographer sold the footage because Diddy never paid him. Gene says Diddy has a long history of not paying people. Security, employees, contractors, artists. Maybe this was someone who finally got revenge. Another theory, someone stole the footage and sold it to 50 Cent. If that's true, the entire documentary may be built on illegally obtained material, and that raises serious questions about the rest of its content. Diddy's violence. What Gene saw firsthand. Gene also talks about protecting Misa Hilton, Diddy's ex and the mother of his first son, Justin. After Gene stopped working for Diddy, Misa asked him to be her bodyguard because she was scared of Diddy. She knew exactly what he was capable of. Gene charged her $2,250 for a few hours of protection and told her, "If Diddy sees you with me, he won't do anything." Because Diddy knew who Gene was. and he knew Gene wasn't afraid of him. The documentary included a story from rapper Eric's sermon about the time Diddy attacked Misa right in front of him. Diddy swung on her in the street. Eric says Diddy told him to come around the corner and fight. Eric didn't do anything. Gene says if he had been there, he would have protected Misa immediately. No hesitation. He confirms Diddy had a long pattern of violence against women, and everyone in the industry knew it. But they stayed quiet because Diddy was powerful. The public was shocked seeing the leaked hotel hallway footage of Diddy attacking Cassie. But Gene says, this isn't new. He's been doing this for decades. The only difference is that video leaked. What Gene thinks of the documentary, Gene watched the documentary closely, took notes, and his verdict? It's old news. Nothing in it surprised anyone in the industry. The freak-offs, the manipulation, the violence, people inside music circles have known these stories for years. The only truly new piece was the private footage of Diddy before his arrest. Everything else, Gene says, was packaged for mainstream viewers. Nothing deep, nothing risky, nothing that exposed the people who actually needed to be exposed. Gene could have provided that depth. He had photos, documents, first-hand accounts, but the filmmakers didn't want it. They wanted something safe, something that blamed everything on Diddy while protecting everyone else who enabled him, because the truth is, Diddy wasn't the only monster in the room. A lot of people participated. A lot of people looked away. A lot of people stayed silent. And Netflix kept their names out of the documentary. That's why Gene calls the entire project incomplete. The bigger picture. Here's what most viewers don't understand. Gene has been exposing these stories for years, long before Netflix and long before 50 Cent got involved. His interviews, podcasts, and YouTube appearances have been documenting the truth the industry tried to bury. Now the question is, what shocked you the most? And what do you think should have been included in the documentary? Drop your thoughts below. Stay sharp. Stay aware.